Warm welcome to Module 3. I am Lokesh Yamar. I am handling the storage area network along with Professor Amrut, Information Science Department. I am working in Computer Science Department as a professor. So, last few sessions we have come across with the Module 1 and Module 2 where in the of a storage area networks, where in terms we will deal about introduction about storage area networks. That means what actually purpose of storage area networks. The main purpose of storage area network is to store our data. Okay, usually we know that the data is stored in the databases. If you want to store a large number of datas, we need to use some external disks. Okay, that external disks which we are using should be done in a large terms of arrays. Okay, large terms of arrays. Okay, how do we do that? That will be done by keeping a track of disks in a single places. Okay, and then the person who wants to access those disks needs to use some network infrastructures through the host machines. Okay, that is what we have come across. If you are overview, bird view, if you look that the data set, if you want to access large number of data, we need to store our large number of data in the arrays of disks, and if you need to access those data from the host machines, we need to have a network infrastructures. Okay, computer network infrastructures. So, similar to that, okay, we have our syllabus. Okay, storage area network syllabus has been divided that how actually the host machines looks like. Okay, the in the first module will tells that the introduction about the host machine looks like whenever we are accessing the informations, okay, from the data centers. So, we need to access through some applications, okay, and then that application has to interact with the operating system. The operating system needs to interact with the network infrastructures which is used to access the data centers, and data that is one part we have learned as a components of data centers. So, the second component is the array of disks, okay, and we have discussed about the properties of storing the informations in the data centers starting from the magnetic tape as well as pen drives, okay, or disks, okay, optical disk like that. So, we are storing an array of optical disk for storing the data. Okay, that is what we have discussed, and along with that we need an intermediate devices, okay, like routers or switches, gateways like that for connecting it, and not only the devices which we are using it, we are using an infrastructures for connecting between infrastructures connecting between the host machine as well as the data centers, along with the set of rules. Okay, we are using a software components for each infrastructures for accessing the data center. That is what we have discussed, and clearly your syllabus has been divided into so many hierarchical things. Okay, the first hierarchical thing is to understand the components of storage area networks, that is your first module, and the second module is how do we connect our the infrastructures. Okay, what are the components which we have used in forming a storage area networks, how do we connect. Okay, for connecting we need a computer network, okay, computer network devices, intermediate devices, that we have discussed in the previous session. Today's sessions is divided as a module 3. Okay, module 3. So, this module 3 will talks about how do we do the backups. Okay, how do we do the backups? So, what do you mean by backups? Assume that we have a data which is stored in one disk, and if the data which is we are accessing the data is been lost. Okay, so that data has to be recovered by using a concept called redundant array. Okay, redundant array. Okay, and we have discussed something called ARID, ARID, redundant array of independent disk. All the independent disk has been kept as a backups. Okay, how do we do that? Okay, that process we will learn today in this module 3. Not only that, so we perform something called archive operations. Okay, archive means like how do we performs a condensed way of storing the data, and we use something called replications. Okay, so what do you mean by replications? Replications means it's a mirroring operations. How do we do the mirroring operations? Why do we perform all these operations? We need to have a backup, and we need to have an archive of storing the data, and we need to have a replications of the data. Backup means storing the informations in a separate places. Okay, replications means mirroring. Okay, assume that if you want to increase the performance of the data centers, and we need to provide a services for the end users of many users. Okay, the scalability becomes increases. Okay, at that cases the data will be deduplicated and it will be data will be shared. All these circus what we have done, that means taking the backup if any disasters occurs in the data centers for recovery purpose of the data, important data, and to archive the data so that we can reduces the space of storing the data, and we can store large number of data, and we perform say mirroring, okay, or replications operations, so that we can increases we can give the services for the end users according to the different scalability like that. So why do we perform all these operations? We perform all these operations for to do something like information availability. Okay, so the main purpose, okay, of every thing which we are dealing is needs to do along with the information availability. That means we need to perform a availability of informations to the host machines 24/7, whether there is a disasters in the accessing the data centers, or there is any drawbacks in the networks, okay, computer network, while we are accessing the data centers through the host machines as well as the data centers, whatever it may be. We need to have, as an end user needs to have a informations available at 24/7. How do we do that? All these operations, these backup operations, archive operations, replication operations, all these needs to be done for making our informations available 24/7. So if you perform such operations, what is the things which we are doing it? Okay, so our business will be improved, okay, and business will be continued. So with n number of times, okay, there will be no disasters occurs, and the informations will be available. So then our business will be increased. Okay, what do you mean by business will be increased? Whenever we are calling it is a business, there will be something called sells and buy. Okay, sells and buy. What do you mean by sells and buy? The people who needs the informations will be hired the information from the data centers, and the people and the data center people will provide the informations. So it is a mutual, okay, between the end user as well as a service providers. Okay, the main purpose of making the host machines satisfactions through business continuity, so that we can increases the business availabilities, okay, and we can use different operations. Okay, so all these operations, whether the information's availability operations and business continuity operations, will be done by using a concept called backups, and by using a concept called archive, and by using a concept called replications. So this subject, okay, this module, okay, this module will talks about the availability of informations to the end users. How do we make an availability of the informations to the end users for 24/7? Okay, that is the main objectives. And the second is, if you make a business data availability for 24/7, obviously the business opportunities for the organizations will be increases. These concepts will be learned both in virtualized fashion and non-virtualized fashion. So, what do you mean by that? That means if you are we have discussed about what do you mean by virtualization and non-virtualization. Virtualization is a concept of making our physical infrastructures in the form of logical infrastructures. Okay. So, we access the physical infrastructures in the form of logical infrastructures, so that if any errors occurs in the physical data centers can be recovered. Okay. People are not directly accessing the physical data centers, they will be accessing through the virtual operations. Okay. To perform such type of things, we deal in details how do we measure a informations. Okay. If the in terms of backupping the data, in terms of archiving the data, and in terms of deduplications of the data in both virtual environment as well as non-virtual environment. Non-virtual environment is the physical environments. Okay. Throughout that, so the main objective is to make our services 24/7. Okay. How do we do that? That will be done by using a backup, archive and replications. So, these type of operations which we are doing is for avoiding the failures occurs in architectures of the storage area networks. Okay. We need to avoid, the third point is to avoid the faults. Okay. Avoids the failures in the data centers to access the informations. Okay, like backup and all, we do it for avoiding the failures in the data centers. Okay, by in terms of architecture fashions. Okay, so whenever we are accessing the data from the data centers, we access the data in the data centers in the form of clustered architecture fashion. Clustered architecture fashion in the sense that a group of host machines is accessing to the data centers, are in the form of multipath architectures. So, in a different network infrastructures the data is accessing like that. So, we understand the avoiding of failures in the data centers both in clustered architecture as well as a multipath architectures like that. And so, directly we understand the procedures and rules how actually the backups will be taken care. Okay, backup will be done and recovery operations will be done. Okay, there are a lot of procedures depends upon the environment, whether the environment is used for the single scale environment, whether the environment is used for the large scale environment, whether the environment is used for specific critical environment, like that. There are different methods are available for performing the recovery operations. Okay, different methods are available, and as I was telling, that depends upon the target of an organization. We do the backup operations. For example, some organizations needs to take the backups every minute. Okay, some organizations needs to take the backup at 1 hour, some organization needs to take the backup at 6 hours, some organization requires 24/7, or some organization requires 6 months backups, like that. So, depends upon the requirements and the target users, we use it, and while we are performing the such operations, we need to follow some procedures, okay, and topologies for performing the operations of backups. So, that we will learn what are the different methods of performing the backups, how do we perform a recovery operations. Okay, recovery operations means like if some data is been disturbed, okay, and it is been disastered, and those disastered operations will be performs the operation will be done by performing an operation called recovery. We have to roll back those operations, that will be done by this. Okay. And the next point, we are dealing with data deduplications. As I was telling that we are understanding the concept of replications. Okay, we use a deduplications operations and also some backup operations in the virtual environment. Okay, you people know that virtual environment is a environment which represents the physical data in the form of logical fashions. Okay, and we have come across with how do we do the virtual environment in a previous session. So we understand data deduplications, data deduplication concepts. Okay, individual data is being deduplicated, and at the same time the backups is being taken so that in virtual environment. So since we are having a two types, we represent the information for sharing the data in the form of virtual environment, we represent the data in the form of data duplications and backups in virtual environment. Okay, so virtual environment. Okay, that is one thing we have learned, and we understand the concept of something called archive. Okay, so something called archive. This archive of data is done at a fixed content and data content. Okay, fixed content, we represent the informations in the form of fixed content and data archives. Okay, so these concepts which we have learned, so that means we are combining the we are reducing the size of the data, and we keep data in the form of contents or in the form of datas. Okay, this is one thing. And whenever we are performing an operations of replications, okay, that means deduplications of the data, these deduplications of the data will be done at the local deduplications, deduplications in the form of regular non-virtualized environment and virtualized environment. So that means whenever we performing a mirroring operations, the mirroring operations is done at the parallelly. For example, the data is stored from the host data centers, so immediately one more disks, in one more disk the mirroring operations will be done and the data will be transmitted. So that is one thing of making a mirroring operations or replications of the data immediately when the data is stored. How do we do that? By using a non-virtual environment, that is nothing but a classic environment, and virtual environment. How do we do that? So the second one is how do we perform a remote replications operations. Okay, remote replications. We know that some of the data needs to be shared in the other environment. Okay, so in one data center the data is stored, the same data needs to be stored in the remote other data centers in the form immediately in the form of replications. How do we do that? By using a non-virtual environment and the virtual environment, that is nothing but a classical and non-classical environment. How the replication operations is done at the remote sites. Okay, and we learned something called three site remote replications and business continuity, right? That means the data protection operations. We understand something called three site remote replications and continuing data protections. When we are copying our data to the other locations, okay, we need to give some privileges for storing the understanding the data, okay, how actually data needs to be shared only for the prescribed fashions like that. Okay. So, this is how actually we have come across with this third module. The first we discuss about how the informations is more important to make availability for 24/7 for business continuity purpose. While understanding the information's availability, we will understand the importance of information's availability. Without information's availability, what is the faults may occurs, okay, what actually recovery, like what is the drawbacks may occurs in the data centers, that we will discuss in details. Along with that, we understand something called business continuity. If you make our informations available 24/7, it improves the business continuities. What are the terminologies we are come across with respect to the business continuity operations to make our informations available 24/7 by making different operations, something like we avoid the failures and we take the backups and recovery depends upon the business perspectives, and we perform say data deduplications and backups for virtualized environments. Okay, in the virtualized environments only we deduplicate the data and we take the backups, and as well as how do we do a archive operations. Okay, that means a condensing of the data and storing the data in a different places, okay, by using a content fixed content as well as a data content archives like that. And then we understand the concept called replications. So, how do we do the mirroring operations? Immediately when the data is stored in the data centers, do we want to store it in the other data centers, or we at the same time the data centers which the data which is stored in one data centers is parallelly stored in the other data centers, like that remote data replications can be done it. How do we do that? So, whenever we perform such type of operations, we learn the concept called 3-site remote replications, and we understand the concept of data protections. Okay, data protection is for making a data protections for the duplications operations. Whenever we duplicating, we need to protect our data, and then we need to do the duplications so that we can perform the operations in a protective manner, so that other person who is unprivileged to access the data will not be access the personal informations in the data centers. So, that we need to have a data protection operations. These covers regarding giving the introduction about the module 3. Now, let us understand what do you mean by business availability by continuing along with understanding what are the contents present in the module 3. Module 3 needs to understand what is the purpose of business informations availability, and to perform the business continuity, and to avoid the failures in the data centers, how the failures will be avoided in the data centers, and how the backups will be taken, and how the replications operations will be done, and how the data or content fixed content archives will be done in the data centers. Those concepts we will learn in the module 3. So, let us continue along with the module 3 of information's availability. The main purpose of information's availability is to improve our business strategies. Okay, business strategies. How do we do that? Okay, business strategies and roadmaps will be developed by using an effective business plan. Okay, by business continuity plans. So, whenever people who wants to set up a new businesses, he needs to identify the infrastructure management initially. That infrastructure managements will be planned by considering factors of information's availability, whether our informations needs to be available for 24/7 okay, like that. Okay. So, the one of the parameters, okay, whenever we are understanding the business continuity for 24/7 is information availability. So, we define the information availability as an ability of an infrastructure to functions according to the business expectations. Okay. So, at a specific operations, for example, some organization will be working for 24/7. Okay, some organizations will not work for 24/7, it will work for only 12 hours or 8 hours, 9 hours, like that. So, if we are hire the infrastructures for the 24/7, if the company works only for the 8 hours, it's waste of resources. Okay, that strategies will be planned, okay, and it will be executed as the part of business continuity plan, business continuity plans. Now, whenever we define what do you mean by information availability, so we tell that it is nothing but a IT infrastructures. Okay, IT infrastructures. What do you mean by infrastructures? So, infrastructures may be the host machines as well as a computer network intermediate devices which we are using, and the data centers which we need to use it. Okay. So, those is information's availability depends upon the IT infrastructures which we are adapted, okay, and to performs a functions according to the business perspectives. Okay, according to the business operations, according to the business operations. Okay, that is how actually we are defining the information's availability. I will repeat once again, information's availability is the ability of an infrastructure to function, ability of an infrastructure to function according to the business expectations during a specific time. Okay. What is the use of using the information availability? If you use the information availabilities, so it will be used to ensure that the people or the organization employees, either it may be a employer or it may be a customers or it may be a suppliers, okay, intermediate person who is providing the informations, or is a intermediate partners. Okay. So, for example, some of the businesses may not be directly interacting with the infrastructures. Okay, he is acting like a middle person. Okay. So, those infrastructures are those components which we are using to make our business information availability to work 24/7 according to the business perspectives. So, we do it. Okay, we use information availability. Information availability ensures the employees, customers, okay, and the suppliers and the partners to access the informations whenever they need. Okay, that is the advantages of using the information availability parameters in the business continuity. So, how do we define the information availability clearly? We can't talk generally that the business which we are providing is more 24/7 information availabilities. Those parameters will be measured. Okay, information availability will be measured by having a matrix, is something called accessibility. Okay, we are having a concept called accessibility. This is the one of the parameters to analyze the concept of information availability. The second parameter is reliability. That means we have an information in the data centers for 24/7, but that information cannot be trusted. Okay, it may be a false data. So, whether the data which is providing to the services, the people, customers, suppliers or the employees is a correct information. So, that is also one of the measures regarding the information's availability. And the third one is timeliness. Okay, what do you mean by timeliness? That means, so when the need, okay, when the information is needed, that information is to provide with the required time. Okay, we can't tell that the informations will be available for 24/7, but the information is not available. It will be available after 24 after 24 hours time. Okay, or it may be you will get the informations after a day, after a week, like that. You can't tell that. So immediately at an instant with the time windows, the information needs to be provided. Such data, the data which is having a accessibility at the right places, okay, right places for the right users, okay. Such parameters is considered as a information availability parameters. So whenever we are talking about there is an information availability, so the information availability is measured in terms of accessibility, whether the information is being provided for the right person, okay, at the right places or that. Like sometimes we have an information, but in certain locations the informations cannot be accessed, then it is not telling that the information availability. So the measurement of the information's availabilities is through the accessibility. That means the information is being provided to the right people at the right places, like that. Okay, and the second parameters of measuring the informations is whatever the information is providing to the people, okay, whether it is a customers or whether it is an employee or intermediate person or suppliers, that information should be a correct in all fashions, okay. And sometimes the data which is stored in the data centers is one of the parameters, and when we are transferring the data from the data from the data centers to the host machines by using an intermediate devices, due to attacks by the middle person, the data may be corrupted and the informations will be distributed to the host machines in a wrong fashion. Those type of those type of faults should not occur when we are considering that there is an information is available for 24/7. That means those things has to be avoided. That means the data which we are accessing by the host machine should be reliable and correct in all aspects to the end users, okay. And timeliness is most important. Within the time window, the data needs to be shared, okay, within the time window. Assume that you are playing a video and we performs the video is not playing now, it will be played after few minutes. So the users may feel difficulty in using the services and they may not continue the businesses. So to make our businesses needs to be continued 24/7, these are the parameter. Accessibility has to be made increases by 24/7 at the right time and right places, and the information is to be reliable and trustworthy, and there is no false occurs and the wrong information need not to be shared, and sharing the timeliness of the sharing the information needs to be done properly. All these type of things, assume that we are not having these parameters. What is the causes? Okay, so how do we feel that the information is not available? So what is the things that there is no availability of informations? So these availability of informations, availability of non-availability of the information is done through a planning, okay. So information, we perform an operation something called, like in a data centers, performs the operation something called installing the software in the data centers and in the host machines, and every time there will be a maintaining the components, okay, whether we are adding a new hardware components to the data centers or we are upgrading any new software to the things due to the upgrading of the technologies, or we need to add some extra software like patches if any fault occurs. So all these things will be done in the data centers, like we perform operations of installing the new software and upgrading the softwares, upgrading the features, and we maintain the operations. All these will be done. Okay, and also sometimes we need to stop the services and we need to take a backup of applications for business continuity for the previous things and all, and we need to restore some of the data, and we need to provide facilities for the operators to renovate the infrastructures which we have used it, and in some cases we need to refresh the data centers for testing purpose, for increasing the productivity. Okay, and we need to migrate the informations from one place to the another places. At that time the informations will be unavailable. Okay, we can't perform the we can't give the people for accessing our reliable services may not be given in timely, data will not be given. Okay, at that cases we have a unavailability issues. Unavailability issues, for example, assume that we are searching the VTU websites. Okay, in VTU websites, if n number of persons is accessing the VTU websites, and they told that at 5 to 6 o'clock you no need to access because there will be a down in the services. That means some maintenance operations will be doing like that. In that maintenance operations, so people are checking whether the services is providing to the end users is properly or not, and in some cases some backup needs to be taken and some restoring of data needs to be done, some extra features has to be added, and we need to refresh once the services, that by removing the cache memories and all to increases the performance and speed up the operations. All these things will be done. At that cases the informations will become an unavailability. So assume that we provide the information is not available. Okay, that means the data is at the downtime. Okay, the information is not in the proper way. So what actually it will cause us? It will cause us for the productivity. Assume that the main purpose of all this we are doing for the business operations. Okay, the business operations will be lost. Okay, the productivity will be lost, and obviously if the productivity is lost means we are losing the revenues, and the performance measures regarding the financial performance will be reduced, and most important, the reputation of the organizations will be lost. Okay, will be lost. So and we lose the customers. For example, some of the services like now everyone are moving to the Reliance services in the mobile aspects due to unavailability of data. So network may not be proper, and downloading time may not be done it properly, and the data which is accessing is unreliability. So these are the parameters. Let us give an example of service provided by the mobile service people. Okay, so availability, accessibility will be less, and reliability will be less, and timeliness will be less. Like that, so many issues will be faced whenever we are dealing with the business opportunities. Okay, so that the revenue will be lost, financial things will be lost. Even whenever we are telling that there is a loss in the productivity, so the individual person who is working in that organizations, the employees also may not get a benefits if the revenue is lost and financial performance is not good, and the equipment which is been already installed may not be utilized properly, and totally the capital amount, okay, required for running the businesses will become a loss. Okay, so these are the two informations we need to discuss with this topic, telling that what do you mean by information availability. Information availability is nothing but the IT infrastructures functions to perform the business operations. We measure the information availability by 3 metrics by using accessibility, reliability and timeliness. And if assume that the services is not available, okay, information is available, what will be the causes? That means the business will be lost and the revenue will be reduced like that. Then let us understand the measurement of business information availability. So technical measurement of business availability. How do we measure a business availability? How do we measure a business availabilities? Okay, how do we measure the information availability? We measure the information availability by using a concept called proactive risk analysis. Okay, what do you mean by proactive risk analysis? Proactive risk analysis is a part of business continuity fashion. Whenever we perform a business continuity, we plan it. Okay, so when usually we can't avoid a failure occur in the infrastructures. Okay, so we need to overcome that failure and we need to reduce those failures. Okay, so we consider some proactive risk analysis telling that, so what are the components will be failed. Assume that we have took a component, new components for our businesses. So the manufacturers will tell that these components will work for 5 years. After 5 years, the performance will be go down. So due to the operations by 24/7 like that. So we need to understand the components of failure rate. Okay, at a period of time when actually it will going to fail. It has to be planned before itself to overcome the unavailability of informations. Okay, so the components which we are using has to check. Okay, assume that these components will be working for 5 years. Okay, over a period of 5 years. Okay, so after 5 years, new components has to be placed. Okay, it has to be switching. All these services needs to be switching to the after 5 years, the services should be shifted to the next components. Like that, the business continuity planning has to be done by performing a risk analysis. Okay, so the rate of failures occurs in the components needs to be measured, and as well as sometimes we need to have some repair. Okay, so assume that along with that we need to have something called repairing. Okay, so we need to identify the repairing time. Okay, assume that after 5 years these components will become a fault. So far we are shifting all the services to the new components. These new components will be operating for a particular time. Okay, and these old components needs to be repaired. Okay, what is the time required for repairing the old components, for replacing the alternate components which we are using it. Okay, such type of measures. Okay, that means the time taken for shifting from old component to the new components, as well as the time taken to repair the old components, is done by terms called mean time between failures. This is the parameters we are considering, which we call it as mean time between failures. So MTBF, this is the term which we are using for mean time between the failures. Okay, and this is the first parameter. The second parameter is mean time to repair. Mean time to repair. Okay, So mean time to repair. So these are the two parameters we are considering as a risk analysis, proactive risk analysis. Why it is called proactive? Before the fault occurs, we need to know when actually it will be occurring the faults like that. So, okay, as I was telling that we are measuring the proactive risk analysis by replacing the faulted components to a new components and the time taken to repair the old components. Okay, both we need to consider while analyzing the proactive risk analysis. This is one of the measuring parameters for information's availability. These type of things is measured by using a component called mean time between failure and mean time to repair. Mean time to repair. Okay, these are the two parameters. So how do we define the mean time between failures? Mean time between failure, as I was telling that it is an average time available for a components or a systems to perform a normal operations between a failures. So this is called as a mean time between failures. Mean time between failure means, so till what time the components are functioning well before going to failure state. Okay, that means the components which is functioning functioning time is called as a mean time between failures. Mean time before going to degradation time, when the component is in the active time, those time is nothing but the mean time of failures. Okay, how do we measure the mean time to repair? It is an average time required for the components to repair. Okay, repair. Okay, so these will be done, and these are the two parameters. As I was telling that this is a components which works 24/7, and sometimes it has to replaces with the alternate components, and the time taken for repairing the old components is measured. Okay, that will be done by mean time between failure and mean time to repair. Okay, mean time to repair is the average time required to to repair a components. So while calculating the mean time to repair, it is assumed that the faults responsibilities is been correctly identified and required by using a spares of components already available. That means, so when we performing a repair operations, we perform an alternate components for working continuity with the business. These are the two parameters we have come across along with the information's availability. Next we will these are the things we have discussed. Next we are discussing about the business continuity in the next session. So today we have discussed about what is the syllabus of the third module, which is nothing but the business continuity things. Business continuity will be done by using a operations, by using a parameter called information's availability. The main purpose of this module is to make our business 24/7 by making an information's availability through some operations, something like backups, replications, archive operations like that, and it can be done with the different means. So this is how actually we start with the third module, and the next sessions will be continued along with the business continuity terminologies. So thank you so much.